Tounde Yessoufou is going to save Baylor basketball.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel, and happy Thursday to you. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show on YouTube through Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you guys making this your first listen today and every day. We're getting into some more basketball on this Thursday. Tounde Yessoufou is going to be the best player on next year's team, and we've barely talked about him on this show because there's been so much going on in the portal. Let's break down Tounde's game, and also let's look, because he'll probably be a one and done, who is the best one and done of these last few years for the Baylor Bears. And also, Dave Aranda has made a target in the transfer portal at a very important position at wide receiver, but Oklahoma might be swooping in to steal this one at the last minute. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Well, we know this 2025-2026 Baylor basketball roster is starting to take shape, right? The portal has closed. Kind of a weird tweet from Baylor yesterday. The portal is closed. You can still sign people. But obviously Baylor was not losing any more players. They lost the ball. So they've built up about half this roster so far, maybe a little bit more than half. We'll see with the other windows what they're able to bring in and who they have once they actually start the summer. But one of the guys I haven't talked about very much on this show because we've been so focused in on the portal has been Tounde Yessoufou, who comes in as a 5-star, now top 10 recruit in the nation coming in next year. And we've kind of gotten tired of the one and done superstar here at Baylor. I know a lot of the fan base has. That started right after the national championship victory, and the proof has been in the pudding. They have not made it out of the second weekend since. And it has a lot of fans, myself included, being like, I'm just kind of sick of this model. And to some degree, Baylor's still doing that with Tounde Yessoufou coming in, but to a larger degree, there's only one of them. There's only one Tounde Yessoufou. And Scott Drew, I think with his moves in the portal, has shown, hey, we are looking for more of the old model. The continuity part is hopefully going to come as well. But all that said, Tounde Yessoufou comes in as a kid straight out of high school, who's going to be turning 19 next month. He is going to be the best player on the roster next year. He's going to be the most talented, that's for sure. And he comes in with all kinds of great comparisons. And I mean, why not? He's now California high school basketball's all-time leading scorer. Okay, he's also he was great in that. What do they call that? That All-American game. It was like the All-America versus the world kind of game. As an high school All-American, he was fantastic. He was turning a bunch of heads. He won the dunk contest, which I didn't do a segment about because you couldn't use the video. But the big thing that's coming out of these kind of All-American camps the last few weeks is Tounde Yessoufou is one of the big names being thrown around in the same sentence, as the Boozer twins and AJ DeBonsa and guys like this. He's in that top echelon. He's moved up from the number 15 recruit in the nation to number 9 in his senior year. Very similar to what we saw with VJ Edgecombe last year. And from an individual standpoint for VJ, that worked out pretty well in his time at Baylor. It transitioned pretty well. The other thing we keep hearing is, when I watch Tounde Yessoufou, he really reminds me of somebody. I can't quite put my finger on it yet, but he really has the same kind of play style as, let me stop you right there. The scouts and the analysts have already linked it in the last few weeks, but Locked On Baylor was talking about this like last summer, basically when he still hadn't even committed yet. When I made this comparison, here's what I see, and now what the other analysts are seeing when they watch Baylor commit Tounde Yessoufou. I see this kid at 6'5" and 210 pounds, had a small forward who is running in transition, and I see Anthony Edwards. I see it. the play style is already there, right? Like 6'5", 6'6", explosive as all get out, like big time hops, very much VJ in that kind of realm, that athleticism. Not much of a three-point shooter, more of a attack the rim guy, a lot like VJ as well. And he even has like the sweatbands in the same spot. And so now you're starting to see everyone being like, you know what? He looks a lot like Anthony Edwards. In fact, when they asked him on kind of this media tour during the All-American events, they asked Tounde Yessoufou which athlete he'd want to swap lives with. He said, Anthony Edwards. And is Anthony Edwards the most efficient player in the NBA? No, but he's a superstar and an all-NBA player in the NBA. And that's what Tounde Yessoufou looks a lot like right now. And if I take you back last year around this time when Anthony Edwards ripped through to the Western Conference Finals before Luka stopped him in his tracks, people were saying, you know what? This Anthony Edwards kid looks a lot like Michael Jordan in the way he plays. So therefore, by the transitive property, Baylor is getting the next Michael Jordan next year. Am I right, folks? Am I right? That might be a little bit too far, I'll admit. But I did want to read this scouting report. This is from Adam Finkelstein of 247 Sports, and he covers the national gamut of whoever the top 20, 25, top 30 players are. And he just writes glowingly about Tounde. Yessoufou is a physical specimen, long, strong, and athletic with a chiseled frame. Could you imagine anyone describing you like that? Golly, I would pay a lot of money even for someone to lie and write that about me. He's also a relentless competitor who plays with a constantly high motor, one of the most consistently productive players in the class, not just because of his physical tools, which are overwhelming, but because he's continued to develop his skill set and diversify his attack. And that's the part that I wanted to point out here, because I know there are a lot of you probably listening right now who say, oh, well, you got a lot of the VJ Edgecombe comparisons. We loved VJ Edgecombe, but the team wasn't very good. And this is not a knock on VJ whatsoever, but Tounde Yessoufou can come in and is already honing other parts of his game. Like I said, he wasn't much of a three-point shooter, and he wasn't going into this last year, but even that has improved. Recent scouting reports are saying, like, man, he's got more of a mid-range game. He's smoother from the outside. The shot looks better. It's going to start going in more. So I just find it interesting, and I know I'm a big part of this, that we've just been so focused in on the transfer portal because you really now only have 2 high school kids coming in. You just got the second commitment the other day with Andre Iguodala II. But the first one you had is still a 5-star. And Tounde Yessoufou is still going to come in here and be the best player on the roster when he hits campus. So, look, that's pretty good. By the way, I said he finishes a lot at the rim. He shoots about 50% from 2-point range and 80% from the free throw line, which I know a lot of us like to hear. And one last note, defensively, his length, strength, and motor are all major assets, even if he might be a bit tight in his hips, whatever that means. He has the versatility to defend multiple positions, being especially switchable up the lineup, is verbal, and is a good wing rebounder. This season, this past year, this is kind of my last note here on Tounde Yessoufou. This past season, 24-25, was a disappointment. But it was not because of VJ Edgecombe. Here comes another guy a year later that is a lot like VJ Edgecombe. This is a chance after Scott Drew. I don't think he misused him at all. But after seeing a whole year of VJ Edgecombe, you're not getting VJ for a second year, but you're getting a second VJ for a second year. And I just wonder what kind of advantage that might play for Baylor and for Scott Drew and his coaching staff to say, look, we might not have misused him last year, but we could have used him in this way, and it might have helped us win a little bit more. You can do that with Tounde Yessoufou because they are very similar players. That said, is VJ Edgecombe the best one and done in Baylor history? Let's go over who that might be, whether it's VJ, maybe it's Tounde Yessoufou in the future. We'll tell you who it is right now, coming up next on Locked On Baylor. Man, that transition did not make a ton of sense, but we're rolling with it, okay? And we're also rolling with basketball still because the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how easy they make it, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into the multiple player props that they got going every night. Plus, after that game tips off, you can combine your live prop bets, which I love to do, into a same game parlay for a chance to win big. It's kind of like going double or nothing in the cash cab. Okay. Don't miss out. Head to fanduel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. And let me know if you even still remember the cash cab. Once again, fanduel.com to claim $250 in bonus bets. So I thought this might be a natural transition as we talk about Tounde Yessoufou being the savior of this year's team, being the second coming of VJ Edgecombe, and also, of course, the theme that we've had to talk about throughout this, challenging offseason, as it were, being how do we use one and dones in this Baylor system? Because it's been pretty good the last couple of years. It's not something that Baylor was used to before that, but after the national championship, lo and behold, these things start to become a little bit more likely, right? And since then, you had Kendall Brown, Jeremy Sohan, Jacoby Walter, Keontae George, Yves Missi, VJ Edgecombe. I'm not talking about the one-year guys that come in the portal. So I'm not talking about Jeremy Roach or Norchad O'Meara or James Akinjo, but rather these stud 4-star, 5-star freshmen that come in and they're probably only there for 1 year. Who is the best when it comes to this still relatively short list of Baylor one and done stars? And I'm not going to do this like 1 through 5. I'm just going to go with looking over all these guys. Because honestly, like the 5th or 6th, whoever finishes last is still a pretty darn, well, not Kendall Brown. Sorry to Kendall Brown, but family, but Kendall Brown is last. Jeremy Sohan kind of came out of nowhere in that year. He did a couple of different jobs for Baylor. Actually, he was a huge reason why they won back-to-back Big 12 championships. But when you look at it, so those two guys, then the next year you have Keontae George, who is really a ton of the offense for a team that does have another All-American in Adam Flagler, but it was all being run through Keontae. And then 24, you have the two guys, that being Walter and Missi, and now with VJ Edgecombe to look at. And VJ, I think Yessoufou is going to be the second highest ranked. VJ would be the first. I think those are the only two top 10 guys out of that list. And VJ's numbers are still pretty good. Again, not the year they were looking for, but 15 a game. And I was actually kind of surprised to see, looking at Keontae George, he and VJ and Jacoby Walter all on that 15-point a game line. Not that I'm like, oh my gosh, really? But it's like, we just think of that Jacoby Walter year of him having more frustrating games than Keontae had. And I was kind of trying to justify it throughout the year of like, yeah, you know what? He went in a big shooting slump. And I was like, but he's doing a lot of other things well. And I think the fact that he stacks up with those three guys on the same point line, points per game line at 15 a game for a freshman in the Big 12 is still pretty dang good. That's why they all won freshman of the year in the Big 12. It is pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. I think Keontae's the pick. If we're just getting right down into it, I think Keontae is the pick. I was surprised looking back at his stats that he only shot 34% from three. It just felt better than that. He obviously took a ton, effective field goal percentage right around 50%, but he took like 7 threes a game. Like that's what he was. And maybe I think of him being the best because he's the best pro right now. But I got to say, and those of you who've listened long enough will know that I'm a big fan of this player. And this player was a fan. I hope still is a fan of the podcast. But on his day, Yves Missi was more dominant than any one of them. Like there was plenty of times in the 24 season where you could have said, Yves Missi's the best player on our team. And we had Matt Linnell on a few times last year. It's tough to schedule him because he lives in Dubai. But he's a big time ball knower. And he would say, like, and he would text me about it too. He'd be like, why are they taking their best player out of the game? And it was about Yves Missi. I mean, the dude was so disruptive on both ends of the floor. If you look at the numbers, you're going to be like, this is not even close. He needs to be in Kendall Brown territory because he only averaged 11 and 6 every night. But the dude was just a problem, especially defensively. And how much he grew in the year, too. He went from like just lob threat dunk guy to very much that. Didn't shy away from that, but also being a good back to the basket kind of scorer and a guy who you could fake a pick and roll to, and he could put the ball on the floor from the free throw line. I loved watching Yves Missi play, and I know a lot of you share the same sentiment of wish we could have had him for more than 1 year. A block and a half a game, all defense in the Big 12. I remember some of the games he had Kyle Filipowski in hell in that Duke game that unfortunately they lost. He played really well against Hunter Dickinson both times. Against Kansas, played well against Juwan Roberts in that Houston game that went to overtime, another one unfortunately lost. But the dude was an absolute monster. And it wasn't necessarily like you weren't going to get a double-double from him every night the way you got from Norchad Omier this year. But I don't know if any of these guys, any of these one-and-dones could wreck a game plan as much as Yves Missi could have. And I'll never forget that first possession of the game against Kansas at the Foster Pavilion when the dude just baptized Hunter Dickinson. I mean, like Hunter Dickinson probably should have retired after then. Of course, he was about 28 and a half at the time. So, but Yves might not be like the best in terms of the stats and the accolades, but for my money, he could control a game better than any of those guys. And Keontae is next. Speaking of Kansas games, remember at Fog Allen, he went off. He had like 7 threes in the first half. He didn't hit any or one in the second half, and they blew a 15-point lead. So you could see how much it went through a guy like Keontae George. But I look at that 24 team, and it still had plenty of talent with another guy on the list, Jacoby Walter, and Jalen Bridges, who, if you didn't think Yves was your best player, certainly it would have been Jalen Bridges. Ray J. Dennis, Langston Love when he was in there. Like, that team was pretty darn talented. And the fact that a freshman who reclassified, who was not supposed to be a one and done, was the most impressive of that lot is in and of itself very impressive. So I'm going Yves Missi. I know it's not a popular one, and I know I said that Keontae is probably the pick. I think that's the conventional pick. But for me, it's Yves Missi. Keontae is in that top tier. VJ is in there too. And I do love what Sohan gave you. Didn't dominate a game quite like Yves Missi could. It didn't have the numbers that the rest of the guys had. But he played, obviously, he was a forward for you. Played some center for you when everyone was hurt and Jonathan Tchamwa had blown out his knee. He steps in at center for some of the time. When Flo's on the bench, he played a little bit of guard for you. He hit big threes for you, even though he was not a good 3-point shooter. Could defend 1 through 5, and most importantly, in that tournament game against North Carolina, got Brady Manick ejected, which allowed Baylor right back into the game in the greatest comeback that never was. So, as much as you might think, oh, we just watched the dude, he's got the best highlight reel, VJ Edgecombe. For me, it's Yves Missi. I'm like one of those guys that votes for the Hall of Fame. Well, I wish I voted for the Hall of Fame, but theoretically votes for the Hall of Fame and looks at a peak of a career more so than just the longevity of it. And like the peak of the Yves Missi game is more dominant than any of the Keontae George, VJ Edgecombe, Jeremy Sohan, and Jacoby Walter kind of games. But I give credit for Walter for keeping up the consistency in the numbers for having the slump that he had in the middle of the season and doing a lot of other things for the team that maybe Keontae George didn't necessarily do, or Kendall Brown didn't necessarily do. So I do want to hear your guys. This should have been a collaborative kind of segment. So let me know in the comment section below. I kind of rambled there, but who do you think is the best one and done of this Baylor era, which is the last 5 years or so? Let me know who you think was the best and why down in the comment section below. Of course, while you're there, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel too. Locked On Baylor rolls on. We're going to talk about a Baylor football target that might be stolen away by an old foe. That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick, which is a complicated read, so stick with me here. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles. We're talking Call of Duty Black Ops, Avowed, and of course, EA Sports College Football 25 as easily as you stream your favorite shows. Okay, with 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and so much more. It's how I keep up with everything. I cut the cord a long time ago. And you can find all your gaming services there as well. So head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Wide receiver has obviously been a big-time position of need, position of target anyway, for Baylor football in this transfer portal. And again, I talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday. Position of need feels strong. I think they're in a good position at receiver, but they'd be really lethal if they had one more Power 4 starter out there. I think you've got kind of a next generation that's about to burst out probably next season. And those are guys like, Jaden Porter and Taz Williams and some of the young guys that are coming in now. Micah Gifford, we'll see. He's playing. Dave says he's probably going to play some defense this year after playing special teams in 24. But they've already thrown out some feelers and some offers to a couple of big time portal wide receiver targets. And the one that I like is Jermichael Carter, and he has scheduled a visit to Baylor. But lo and behold, on Wednesday, all of a sudden, Oklahoma swoops in. It was Utah and Baylor, and now the Oklahoma Sooners. Brent Venables, desperately needing a winning season here to keep his job at OU, is going after some Baylor targets. I'm sure Brent Venables sees it, probably watches the podcast, Locked On Baylor, and says, ooh, if Baylor's looking at him, I should get after him. It's like the old MLB days when they were like, oh, the St. Louis Cardinals like him, then we like him. Because if the St. Louis Cardinals liked him, that means the Houston Astros liked him. Anyway, I'm getting way off track there. But it was going to be Utah and Baylor, and now all of a sudden a visit to Oklahoma Friday. So he will be there tomorrow as you're listening to this. And I really like Jermichael Carter from McNeese, man. I said it on the show yesterday, but he comes in and immediately with his numbers from last year, he would be the third leading receiver on this team, only 30 yards behind your second leading receiver in Ashton Hawkins. And the good news is for Baylor, both of your top two receivers from last year are coming back, plus Michael Trigg. So your top three pass catchers. So this kid comes in with a couple of years left, probably going to demand a bit of a price tag because of that. But would be a perfect depth guy this year as a third option, maybe even a fourth with Kobe Prentice, and can slot in as a first or second option in 2026. I just love that possibility. We see a succession plan at quarterback. We could see it at stud wide receiver as well. And so now here comes OU. Here comes the Sooners, our old rivals, if you can call them that. I know a lot of Baylor fans don't want to call them that. And I certainly know a lot of Oklahoma fans don't want to see Baylor as a rival, right? But Baylor sent out a couple of feelers here. Obviously, the big one being Keelan Marion from BYU, the All-American kick returner. He's set his dates. He's visiting other schools, not visiting Baylor. And lo and behold, there are a couple of schools with big-time pockets. But as we look in this transfer portal window, because I think Baylor will pick up a receiver in this window, it's going to be someone like Jermichael Carter rather than Keelan Marion. The other guy they offered was Trayshawn Hurry, who is now at Louisville, is committed to Louisville. But don't expect a big name to come in here, and that's a good thing. Like, this is not, revisionist history. But having a guy like Jermichael Carter with some room to grow, some years that he can play there, and already a pretty productive player on a bad offense with McNeese at a lower level, that's the kind of guy you should be looking forward to more than reaching for Keelan Marion or even Zacharias Williams from Utah. I wouldn't be upset with getting a guy like that, like Williams, but he's still fitting into the college football game, whereas I don't think Carter is. I think Carter is fit into this game, and it's evidenced by the fact that Utah, not a good year, but a respectable program, is going after him as well. And Oklahoma, another team with a losing record, but a respectable program, has come after him as well. So I'll just say this, and I don't often speak for all Baylor fans, but I will this time for Jermichael Carter, if you're listening. Oklahoma is great and everything. Utah is. But if you want to play at a football team that's going to have a winning record, you should probably think about coming to Baylor more so than Oklahoma or Utah. They can't guarantee you that. They can't. They don't have, neither of those teams has as good a quarterback as Baylor does. I think that is a big part of this. And you're also not going to be going against the number one cornerback if you come to Baylor. And you're going to develop into that number one player, number one receiver after year one. I'm just saying. John Mateer's nice. Devin Dampier plays quarterback. But Sawyer Robertson's much better than both of them. And the offense is more exciting. And you're going to be lauded as a hero here. Just saying. Oklahoma, last couple years, they've shown you they can't give you a winning record. That's a stretch for them, especially in the SEC. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What position are you looking at in the transfer portal for Baylor to improve their team with? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are on the fast track to 4,000 subscribers, and we are getting closer and closer every day because of you great people that watch every day and then subscribe to the number one spot for Baylor sports information for Baylor fans is not coming directly from the university. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.